Welcome to Immediate Immersion Live. How is everybody doing today? Go ahead and let me know in the chat if you are watching live. Put in hashtag live, and if you're watching on the replay, type in hashtag replay. So excited to see everybody here today. And today you're about to discover the game-changing question techniques that will transform your classroom from passive to powerhouse. And if you're tired of one-word answers and looking to ignite a fire under your students' language skills, you're in the right place. Stick around because these strategies are going to blow your mind and elevate your teaching game to levels you didn't think were possible. Let's dive in. My name is Scott, and you're watching Immediate Immersion Live, where we're all about comprehension-based instruction in the modern language classroom. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Before we get started, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. Just a reminder, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Or if you're watching it on the replay, go ahead and put them in the comments below. I check back regularly and answer all the comments personally. So engage with us. It helps us get out to more people, to more teachers. If you find this content helpful in any way, please click that like button to let everybody know. And also, consider subscribing if you haven't done so. We're on a road to 1K, and we're almost there. We need about, I think it's about 85 more subscribers, and we hit that first 1,000, which has been a goal of ours. So excited about that. Also, I'd like to just tell you about our upcoming mini course that we have coming up. Go ahead and put that up here. Where it is? There it is. So we have our Beyond the Basics. So lots of our training that we have, that you have available to you at conferences, at workshops, hits the beginning parts of comprehensible input. How to get started, how to work with the lower levels, all of those types of things. Well, not beyond the basics. We're going to go beyond the basics of traditional comprehensible input. So we're targeting our advanced students and advanced comprehensible input teaching skills. There are 10 live classes that we're doing. Of course, they'll be made available for the replay if you want to watch on the replay. But we're going to start with 10 live classes, all for just $97. So if you're interested in joining us, we'll be starting the class soon. I think we're going to be starting in about 2 weeks. And as I said, we have 10 classes covering all of advanced ideas, techniques, strategies to not only hit your advanced students, but also develop your advanced CI skills. So if it's something you're interested in, please go to mm.us/beyond. You can read more about it, see what the content is, and save your seat. Hope you're interested. And again, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments or in the chat. And with that, let's go ahead and get started with today's topic. So today we are talking all about killer questioning. So we know that how important questioning is to the comprehensible classroom. We are constantly asking questions, not only to gauge our students' comprehension of what we're talking about, but also to go deeper into the content. It's a way to add repetition so kids can hear the patterns and get the patterns in their heads. So it's really, really an important thing. And we all know, we all know the basics. We know that we start with yes and no and either or questions. Then we move on to who, what, where, when type questions, which are concrete questions and generally relatively easy to answer, even for our beginners. And then we kind of move into the how and the why questions, which are a little bit more open-ended and generally open up more language. And we usually target our faster processors with those types of questions. So our first thing we want to talk about is let's leverage the power of the open-ended question. Why? Because this hits our advanced students and our students who are ready to go on much more deeply. So the strategy is to ditch the yes and no questions for our superstars, to kickstart deeper thinking and longer responses by framing questions that can't be answered with a simple yes or no. This allows them to use all of their language skills and vocabulary and grammar to formulate longer, more detailed answers. And it gives us a bigger insight into the proficiency level of our students. So instead of asking things like, did you like the story? Try something like, what did you think about the main character's choices? This will push the students to elaborate and engage more deeply with that material. And they have to use more language. Now, I would not target this with my average student. So, my average student or my slow processor, this is not who I'm going to ask these questions to. These are my superstars. These are the kids who are ready, who need the challenge, and like to show off their language abilities. Now, however they answer the question, we have to be really careful not to stunt their growth by stopping their answer in the middle to correct their grammar. Let them speak in the language that they have. That gives you a lot of information about their proficiency level and areas where they need to actually improve. And then you can parrot back what they said in correct language so that they can hear how it is correctly. You could say, like, I heard you say this, and then say what they said back. And then as you further question them, you can show the patterns of the correct language that they can mimic off of. And over time, their language will become more accurate. This is not the time to stop and correct them because you're going to stunt their growth. They're going to say, I'm not going to try anymore to answer the questions because all they're going to do is correct me. And this is what happened in my German class. I tell this story all the time. I love my German teacher. She was an incredible lady. I learned so much from her in college. And I understood everything that she said, and she made everything very comprehensible. But when it came time for us students to speak, she wouldn't let us get a sentence out with correcting our grammar. And it made a lot of us hesitant to want to speak because we didn't want to be exposed like that. So keep that in mind when you're talking with your students. Now, why does this work? It works because it encourages students to use more language and express opinions, fostering a richer classroom dialogue and boosting their confidence in using the target language. And when you ask these questions, they're not a once and done type thing. You want to go deeper, ask follow up questions, keep a conversation going, but try to phrase all of the questions that you're having in more open-ended ways so that you're encouraging more language use and more language use. And then you can add your opinions in there as well. So like going back to our example, what did you think about the main character's choices? You give the opportunity for a student to answer. You parrot back what they say. This is what I heard you say. This is what I think. I agree with you on this point, but on this point, this is what I think. And then you can give your information. And then you can ask them, so what do you think about that? Do you think my idea is also a valid idea? You see, you can ask follow-up questions and go deeper and deeper, but you're asking open-ended questions. You're not just asking for a simple yes or no. And if they give you a simple yes or no, then ask them to elaborate, to explain their answer in more detail so that you're getting more feedback into the language that the students are able to use, and you're pushing them to use all of their language skills to answer the questions more completely. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to be asking them to go complete sentence, complete sentence, complete sentence, because in reality, we really don't talk in complete sentences. But what you're asking for is a more thorough answer. And often those are in full sentences, but not always. But what we want to stay away from is the yes and no and the one-word answers. We want more language out of them. We want them to think and expand and take everything that they know about the language and show us what they can do with it. That's why we're teaching advanced students. That's what we're doing here with the advanced students, or in our lower level classes, the kids who need to be challenged, our superstars, the kids who like to show off. Again, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat or in the comments below. And let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. So, our next topic is going to be building on student responses. So, we kind of hit upon this already a little bit, but our strategy here is to use the echo, elaborate, evaluate technique. So, you want to echo student responses to acknowledge them. For example, let's go about we're taking suggestions for a story. You don't want students to think that their ideas are being ignored. So what do? You acknowledge as you hear answers, you kind of repeat them back, you echo them so that the kids know that you heard them and that you're acknowledging them. You may be still going further so that you can get more responses and have more of a choice to choose, but you want to echo the students' responses to acknowledge them. When we ask those open-ended questions, we want to echo back what the student said to make sure that we understood what they said. And it lets them know that we heard them and that we understand them. Then you want to elaborate on that information by adding new information or rephrasing their ideas. So that's where we're validating them, we're acknowledging them, and then we're elaborating. We're taking that information, we're rephrasing it, we may be adding some of our opinions into that. We're making this into a deeper conversation, not just a Q&A session. And then we take all that information and we evaluate it by posing another question to deepen the understanding. We're always going from the more generic to the more specific, from the more general to the more concrete. So we want to keep going deeper so that we are getting a better understanding of what the student understands about what we're asking about. We're also getting a lot of feedback about the students' language use. Are they sticking to really simple, safe sentences? Or are they trying more complex grammar that they may not be ready for or have totally acquired, but at least they're pushing their limits, they're pushing their boundaries? That's a good sign. Even though they might not be getting it right, it's a good sign that they're ready for that information and that you know you can provide that incomprehensible input in your lessons that will apply to that student so they can add on to their linguistic abilities. So an example here would be if a student says the character was brave, you might respond, yes, the character was brave when she faced the challenge. How do you think she felt during that moment? And then when they've got the answer, you can say, oh yeah, that's very true. Have you thought about this? And then you can add your 2 cents in there. It's a really powerful technique to use the acknowledge, the elaborate, and the evaluate techniques when you're asking questions to go deeper with the student so that it's not just a rapid fire Q&A session. We're going deep. We're diving deep in there. And we may not cover as much material, but we're going much deeper into the material that we are covering. And why does this work? Well, this technique validates student contributions because they realize that we hear them and that we're acknowledging them and that their ideas are valuable. It also enriches the conversation. and it keeps the discussion dynamic and flowing, encouraging continuous language use and comprehension. Because they have to keep it flowing, keep it going, they're using their language skills to sustain more language. It's teaching them how to sustain conversations, how to keep the dialogue going, how to ask some of their own questions back. And whenever students are able to keep the conversation going, they are acquiring more language. They are showing ways of that they're showing their proficiency levels and how they are using the language that they know. And then you can use that information to plan future lessons. I always get so thirsty on these. I talk too much. So, it's such a really powerful methodology here to go deeper into the content. This stuff really, really works well when you're talking about things like novels. That's where this really, really works well. You can go deeper into the novel. It will take you a longer time to get through the novel doing this, but what the kids get out of the novel is much more rich, much more valid. They're getting deeper thinking into the stuff in the novel. And you can even use basic novels and still go deep in there. Like with Brandon Wants a Dog, you can go into the motivations and why he wants a dog and the motivations why he lies to his parents. All of those types of things. You can go deep into that. Even though the book is very simple, the ideas behind the book are not so simple. Next, let's talk about incorporating real life scenarios. So the strategy here is to connect questions to students' lives or real world situations that relate to the lesson content. So whenever you can take student interests and combine that with your lesson content, that is a win-win for everybody. Kids don't care about your lessons. And they always want to know, why are we learning this? What is the point to this? And when you can bring those two things together, we're learning this because of this, and this is how it relates to you and your world, they're going to say, oh, okay, I can see the importance of this, and they're going to be more engaged. It makes the whole learning experience more relevant for them and more engaging. A few years ago, in one of my previous districts I worked at, this is something that we were trying to do and trying to incorporate that in all disciplines, whether it was math or English. Our goal was to try to relate what they were learning to real world situations that actually apply to the interests of our students. And I know, here's my example. Math was not my strong subject. I did not like math. I struggled to do well in it, and it was very slow going for me. It was very hard for me to understand it. But part of it was the stuff that they were talking about, especially in story problems, was not relatable to me. The famous one that I always quote is, there is a train on track A going at such and such speed, and there's a train going in the opposite direction on the same track. At what point will they collide? Okay, who cares? Do you think anybody on that train is calculating that? They are trying to find a way to stop the train, and if they can't, they're finding a way to get off that train. So that is not a very practical, real-world application of that equation that they were trying to illustrate. A better way, which is more logical and more realistic, would be if your friend lives in Minneapolis and you live in Los Angeles, and you both are going to meet in Las Vegas, and you're going to both drive, when does the person from Minneapolis need to leave? And when does the person in Los Angeles need to leave so that they can arrive at the hotel at the same time? That's more realistic. Friends go and have road trips to meet each other in certain places all of the time, and that's more realistic. That's also why physics class, my high school physics class, was so much more interesting to me because we related it to real world tasks. Every problem that we face, there's a lot of math and physics, but every one of them was applied to something tangible, something real world, something that we could actually imagine. We did vectors with boats and with planes because you can't fly straight from point A to point B and expect to get there. The wind takes you off your path and you need to account for that. The same thing with a boat. You can't go straight across from point A to point B. You need to take into account the current. All of those things are really important. And so those real world situations really make it more pertinent. So I know, like, in math, they started relating things to sports to figure out statistics and speeds and velocities of balls to be able to hit them. All those types of things made it much more engaging for the students. And we can do the same types of things in our language class. An example might be when discussing vocabulary about foods in a French class or a German class or a Spanish class. Instead of simply asking for translations or definitions, ask, what would you order from a French or a German restaurant? And why? How would you ask the questions? How would you order? What kinds of questions might you ask about the menu? What kinds of things would you explain to the waiter? Perhaps you don't like this or that, or you're allergic to this or that. How would you express those things? So this makes it much more personalized. Plus, when you find out personal information about your students, which you should always be trying to do, and when I say personal information, I don't mean personal information, but their interests, their likes, the sports that they engage in, the activities that they like, the hobbies that they like, those types of things, you should be constantly through every interaction with your students trying to figure these things out so that you can add them into your lessons to make them more relevant. And why does this all work? It personalizes the learning experience. It makes it more meaningful and memorable and encourages your students to apply their knowledge to real life contexts. We know teenagers have a two-track mind. The first track is me, 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 and the second track is my friends, my friends, my friends, my friends. If you engage in either their interests or the interests of their friends, you have their attention and their engagement. So those are the kinds of things that you want to work for. So you're looking constantly for ways to take what they're interested in and matching it with what you need to teach and finding a happy medium in there and finding ways to put them into real life contexts so they can actually see the importance of what they're learning. But again, we're not talking about specifics here where you are going to have them rehearse these real life contexts to where they memorize their lines. We want to teach them how to be able to take whatever language that they have and apply it to any situation to the best of their abilities. For example, I have never ever taught a scenario in which a customer service person at, like, for example, a clothing or a shoe store helps someone buy a shirt or buy a pair of shoes. I've never done that in my classroom. But my kids have enough vocabulary and patterns of the language in their head that they can apply it to those real life situations. How do I know this? Because kids come back and tell me, Profe, I worked at the mall and I work at the Gap or I work at Foot Locker or I work at Nike Shoes or wherever it is, and this person came in and they didn't speak English and I was able to help them. And I'm like, well, how would you do that? We never specifically talked about these scenarios. And like, I just used the language that I had, and we were able to communicate back and forth. That's the power of this. That's the potential. And that's how you can prove true proficiency. They're not using memorized phrases. They're actually applying the language they have in context they haven't rehearsed before. That's true proficiency. Next, let's go ahead and talk about the power of why. Why is always a difficult question to answer, generally because it requires more language to answer it. So the strategy here is, after initial responses, follow up with why questions to encourage deeper thinking and explanation. And this strategy pushes students beyond the surface level understanding. You know how your toddlers, they ask a question and you answer why, and then you answer it and then they go why, and then they answer it and you go why. They keep wanting to know why everything is. You want to employ the same kind of strategy, obviously not to the point of a toddler where that gets to be really annoying, but you want to have them try to explain, because when they have to answer the why question, they're going deeper. They're not only evaluating their own understanding and thinking, they're going deeper into that thinking to be able to explain it to you. And when they're doing so, again, they're using the language that they have, and you can make all kinds of gauges on their proficiency levels by the language that they're using. For example, if a student says they agree or disagree with a character's decision in a story, follow up with, why do you think that? Or what makes you say that? And then you can use that echo, elaborate, evaluate method to acknowledge what they say, to add on to it like your own ideas, and then you can ask more questions to go even deeper with it. Why is just such a very, very powerful question, because it always requires deeper thinking. And you can do this even with your lower levels, albeit at a lower level, but you can always go deeper with why questions. I always hold my why questions, again, for my advanced students, my superstars, my fast processors, because it does require more language to answer them, and it allows them to show off. And they like that. They like to be able to show off their language skills. So why does this all work? Well, it fosters critical thinking and helps students articulate their reasoning, deepening their comprehension and ability to express complex ideas in the target language. So critical thinking we're always trying to do. In anything that we do, we want our kids to think critically about what we're talking about. And this gives them, when you ask these why questions, you're giving them the opportunity to articulate their reasoning and their deepening comprehension and ability to use the language in complex ways. It's really, really important. And by them doing this, it also fosters their, I lost my word, their confidence. That confidence is a really key aspect to language acquisition. And when they can answer these questions and go deeper and articulate what they want to say, that builds confidence for them. And they feel proud of what they can actually do in the language, and they feel more accomplished. Again, if anybody has any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat or the comment section. Lastly, let's talk about visual stimuli to spark interest. Human beings are visual beings. We get a lot of our environment. We experience it, most of it, through our eyes before any of our other senses. So use images, videos, or realia to create a context for questioning. Visual aids can make abstract concepts concrete and stimulate more detailed responses. So we start with images. Most all of us have question word posters in our room. That's the very basic in there. But we can have funny images that we can talk about, or funny videos, or some reality that we bring into the classroom to create a context for questioning. One of my fun activities I like is I will either collect myself some random items and put them in a box, or as students come into the classroom, they contribute one random item to the box. They get it back at the end of class. And then we use questioning to try to figure out what's in the box. And it makes for a very fun, interesting way. And kids can use imagery and realia to be able to experience this. And these visual aids can make these abstract concepts so concrete. And that's really important. So an example might be to show a short video clip related to our lesson and ask students to describe what happened, predict what might happen next, or explain the character's motivations. This works so well with either picture talk or movie talk. And I love using both of those to spark a story. So if it's a picture talk, you can ask them, first of all, start with describing what's in the picture, and then ask them about what do they think is going on in the picture, or what might they think about this picture. I have one of my favorite pictures I have is an orangutan, and in its mouth it's got multiple apples, like 5 or 6 different apples. So we start off by describing that picture of the orangutan, and then we talk about the apples that are in the mouth. Then I ask, why does he have these apples in his mouth? And so we get some ideas that some kids think, well, he's hungry. Well, then some kids say, he's sharing. He's got these apples and he's going to take them to his family to share. And then some other kids will say, oh, he stole these apples from some other apes. So we get all these predictions of what might happen next. And we can talk about the character's motivation. Movie talk. This is, you're going through scene by scene a video. And so you can stop after each scene and they can predict, what do you think is going to happen next? Why do you think the character did what they did? There's that why question. You're always going deeper, but you're having a context of visual clues, videos or images to work with. Or in the example of my mystery box, some actual realia. So why does this work? Well, visual stimuli can capture students' attention more effectively than text alone. Text is boring. It's black and white. It doesn't add anything really to it, and it requires a lot more work on the student's part to comprehend it. They have to imagine it and make a picture in their brain. And some kids just can't do this effectively. And it also provides a shared reference point for discussion because everybody sees the same thing. Whereas if you're talking about text alone, everybody can imagine things differently. Everybody might have a different image of what the main character looks like compared to their neighbor. It also aids in comprehension and making the language learning experience more dynamic and engaging. Kids love working with these images, especially the funny images. And I'll tell you where I get mine. I usually go on Google Images, and I usually do one of 3 searches, really give me the good jackpots. Funny animals. And every year there is a funny animal award. The Funny Animal Awards, I guess is what we call it. So you can search for that as well. And they have maybe like 5 to 10 images that won awards for being funny. So you can get those and you can go back to past years and collect those, or just do funny animal search or a funny baby search. And then one of my friends from Belgium. She told me she likes to look for awkward family photos. And oh my gosh, is that a treasure trove to find images to use? All the different kinds of images that family photos have. So they're hilarious. So those are my 3 ways. If you have other ways to search for good images, let me know in the comments or the chat. That'll be really, really helpful. We can all share those things, but those are my 3 go-tos. My kids really like talking about these, and I make a collection of them, and I save all of my images as I go along so that I don't have to search on the internet to find them again. When I find a good image, I take it, I save it, and then I have it for future use. So those are the strategies that we can implement to take our questioning to the next level and go deeper. Because when we're working with our level 3 and our level 4 students, we want to go deeper and we want to go beyond the normal types of questions that we always ask in the lower levels. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't ask lower level questions in your upper levels or upper level questions in your lower levels. It just depends on who you're asking. So if you are having some slower processors in your levels 3 and 4, AP, IB, then you can target some more basic level questioning for them. But wherever you have your superstars, your fast processors, whether it's in low levels or the upper levels, you want to challenge them. And these strategies can be used to challenge them. So again, if you found any of this information helpful, please like and subscribe. It really, truly helps us get the content out because YouTube knows that this information is useful to people. So please click the like button. Please click subscribe if you haven't already done so. Again, we're on our road to 1K, and we're giving away some great prizes to anybody who's subscribed once we hit our 1K. So look out for that. Also, again, if anybody is interested in taking their CI skills to the next level, then we have our Beyond the Basics mini course. Again, it's 10 classes. If you're interested, you can go to mm.us/beyond and save your seat. Also, before I go, let me know, is Sunday at 3 o'clock working better for you than Monday at 5 o'clock? Let me know that. If 3 o'clock's not a good time, but Sunday's a good day, let me know what time of day would work better on Sunday. Or would another day altogether work better? Let me know in the comments so that we can find a good time for all of us to engage together in the conversation. So with that, next week we are scheduled again to be at 3 o'clock Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, next Sunday, which is going to be the 21st, I believe. I hope to see you all then. Until then, everybody, have a great rest of your weekend and an awesome week.